astrology is a big component in the lightning path. And as far as I'm concerned, there are as many astrologies as there are astrologers. You can imagine this group of people here, each with a sense of what astrology is. Well, each one is going to have a different take on that. And that's entirely plausible and logical. And each has his or her own take on things through the astrological lens, through the astrological tools that they actually use. So what I'm introducing you to here today is based in astrology, and it bridges into mythology. And I think that's one of the unique aspects of the lightning path. So according to my approach to astrology, a person's birth chart is a mandala of personality. As such, it manifests the three basic characteristics of all mandalas. They have a center, they have symmetry, and they have cardinal points. So what we're doing in utilizing the mandala principle is we're taking advantage of its universality. The universality of the mandala is in its one constant, the principle of center. The center is symbolic of eternal potential. Your birth chart is a map of your unlimited potential as a being of light. Now, the roots of my astrology are in the humanistic astrology tradition pioneered by Dane Rudhyar in the last century. He spent over 50 years reformulating astrology for the modern era. And Michael Mayer, a younger fellow, became very much attuned to Rudhyar's approach and brought forth his own teachings around astrology, and specifically his book, A Handbook for the Humanistic Astrologer, which came out in the 70s, was really a foundation work for the whole brand of astrology that we are considering here, the humanistic approach. And what he has to say about astrological study is, astrological study should be a process that commences with the development of the mental faculties, both concrete and abstract, and is completed when its primary purpose is accomplished, the transformation of the individual into something more. This something more has the characteristic of transcending duality through the reconciliation and synthesis of opposites. The core archetype of opposition would be the relationship of the sun to the moon, which, as Rudhyar says, refers to the very essence of life. So we're getting here to the primordial, most ancient, most inclusive aspects of these symbols. Rudhyar brought cyclicity back to astrology. It had strayed from that into other realms, and in his reworking for the 20th century, he really brought the notion of cycle back into prominence, and it came through pretty much through his teaching around the lunation cycle. And this mandala shows one complete lunar cycle. This is the synodic cycle of the moon, from a new moon to a new moon. And that cycle has an inner structure. Now, as Steve was sharing earlier, he's traveled this circle, consciously moving through the phases, and these are different structural characteristics for each phase. And it's quite the enlightening journey to do that. And really glad to see that you've had that journey, Steve. So when I first got into Rudyard's lunation cycle teaching, that was in 1972. And I instinctively felt the urge to establish a journaling practice for myself, attuned to the phases of the moon. So I realized that I had every day the opportunity to learn something new about the cycle as a new phase would come on. And it's been a very rewarding practice. I now have almost over 50 years of journals in my care. And it's a very rich resource for me now in my elder years. It's also a practice that put me in a place of readiness to receive a larger awareness or come into a larger awareness. So, and that was when it bridged to mythology. So the lightning path does integrate astrology and mythology, specifically the mythology of the Americas. But one of my favorite historians, William Irwin Thompson, in his book Darkness and Scattered Light, he shares the following: myth is the story of the higher self. History is the story of the ego. If the ego has a limited perspective on matters and always sees things through its own passions and desires, then it is not going to be concerned with the larger perspective of the evolution of humanity or the nature of divinity. Myth, by contrast, is the larger picture. To think big is to think mythically. Joseph Campbell on the material of myth. The material of myth is the material of our life, the material of our body, and the material of our environment. And the living vital mythology deals with these in terms that are appropriate to the nature of the knowledge of the time. And our time is very much aligned with all things global. Now, the new moon before our birth is very significant in terms of the lightning path. It's a vital factor in ascertaining the fundamental nature of the stream of vital forces energizing our entire biopsychic organism. This is a really fundamental focal point for any astrological work in terms of the lightning path. And I'll be showing you just why. It has a lot to do with this fellow and this book, which came out in 1984. I got into it in 1985. It's an extraordinary book of 50 maps of consciousness, all synthesizing the Mayan calendar, the chakra system, the I Ching, the Chinese Book of Changes, and much, much more. And it really brings to life in the modern era this recurring myth of the feathered serpent, which embraces a myth of eternal return. So it's cyclicity understood on a broad cultural scale. The feathered serpent is pervasive throughout Mesoamerica and down into Peru with the Inca. Their counterpart to the feathered serpent was called Viracocha. Throughout Mesoamerica, feathered serpent was Kukulkan, Gukamats was another name. So various cultures embraced this overarching myth and gave it form, gave it life, brought it to life. And now in the modern era, especially through Arguelles, the feathered serpent has come alive once again. So one of the maps of consciousness that he presents is this one, which is the holonomic model of knowledge. So this is a very holistic orientation to all manner of scientific endeavor, especially scientific, but also artistic. We have three major sectors: the heavenly sciences, the human or biopsychic sciences, and the earthly sciences. Now, all of these are emanating in time from the geomantic core. So as we see at the core of this diagram, shamanism and geomancy, so both of which refer to man's relationship to heaven and to earth. So it's a way, geomancy and shamanism are a way of aligning ourselves to the greater life, but having a very centered orientation, a very, we have the kind of orientation that we can look to the east and derive a consistent sort of information from. We look to the west, it has a different meaning. Above, below, all of these things are taken into consideration. And in doing so, we're synthesizing all these different disciplines. We're not limited to one or the other. Now, the new moon before birth really locates us at that center point. So what I'm saying, it's a very primordial astrological indicator, and it's one that is really worthwhile paying attention to. So Arguelles brings forth this notion of the Psi Bank. Now we have here a very abstracted view of the Earth with the Van Allen radiation belt indicated, both belts. And he's proposing that cycling between those two extremities, the outer Van Allen belt and the inner, is a realm of knowledge, a realm of consciousness that is very much in the Psi, of the Psi nature. So it's very much, this is where we find fourth dimensional planetary memory field. This is the realm of holistic thought. These are the realm of the structural principles, the abstracted principles. So his notion is that we have this realm of consciousness that we can gain access to. And his working with the Mayan calendar has brought him to the place of seeing a fundamental pattern that is utilized. It's fractal, so it's used at all different scales, but it's a consistent integration of diverse systems of thought. My sense is that it also then includes other conscious beings, such as the cetaceans, that the cetaceans have just as much, if not more, access to this realm as we do. And the way the cetacean consciousness keeps popping up in my life, it just keeps confirming that. So astrology is a big component in the lightning path. And as far as I'm concerned, there are as many astrologies as there are astrologers. You can imagine this group of people here, each with a sense of what astrology is. Well, each one is going to have a different take on that. And that's entirely plausible and logical. And each has his or her own take on things through the astrological lens, through the astrological tools that they actually use. So what I'm introducing you to here today is based in astrology. and it bridges into mythology. And I think that's one of the unique aspects of the lightning path. So according to my approach to astrology, a person's birth chart is a mandala of personality. As such, it manifests the three basic characteristics of all mandalas. You have the center, you have symmetry, and they have cardinal points. So what we're doing in utilizing the mandala principle is we're taking advantage of its universality. The universality of the mandala is in its one constant, the principle of center. The center is symbolic of eternal potential. Your birth chart is a map of your unlimited potential as a being of light. Now, the roots of my astrology are in the humanistic astrology tradition pioneered by Dane Rudhyar in the last century. He spent over 50 years reformulating astrology for the modern era. And Michael Mayer, a younger fellow, became very much attuned to Rudhyar's approach and brought forth his own teachings around astrology, and specifically his book, A Handbook for the Humanistic Astrologer, which came out in the 70s, was really a foundation work for the whole brand of astrology that we are considering here, the humanistic approach. And what he has to say about astrological study is, astrological study should be a process that commences with the development of the mental faculties, both concrete and abstract, and is completed when its primary purpose is accomplished, the transformation of the individual into something more. This something more has the characteristic of transcending duality through the reconciliation and synthesis of opposites. The core archetype of the opposition would be the relationship of the sun to the moon, which, as Rudhyar says, refers to the very essence of life. So we're getting here to the primordial, most ancient, most inclusive aspects of these symbols. Rudhyar brought cyclicity back to astrology. It had strayed from that into other realms, and in his reworking for the 20th century, he really brought the notion of cycle back into prominence, and it came through pretty much through his teaching around the lunation cycle. And this mandala shows one complete lunar cycle. This is the synodic cycle of the moon, from a new moon to a new moon. And that cycle has an inner structure. Now, as Steve was sharing earlier, he's traveled this circle, consciously moving through the phases, and these are different structural characteristics for each phase. And it's quite the enlightening journey to do that. And really glad to see that you've had that journey, Steve. So when I first got into Rudhyar's lunation cycle teaching, that was in 1972, and I instinctively felt the urge to establish a journaling practice for myself, attuned to the phases of the moon. So I realized that I had every day the opportunity to learn something new about the cycle as a new phase would come on. And it's been a very rewarding practice. I now have almost over 50 years of journals. in my care, and it's a very rich resource for me now in my elder years. It's also a practice that put me in a place of readiness to receive a larger awareness, or come into a larger awareness. So, and that was when it bridged to mythology. So the lightning path does integrate astrology and mythology, specifically the mythology of the Americas. But one of my favorite historians, William Irwin Thompson, in his book Darkness and Scattered Light, he shares the following: myth is the story of the higher self. History is the story of the ego. If the ego has a limited perspective on matters and always sees things through its own passions and desires, then it is not going to be concerned with the larger perspective of the evolution of humanity or the nature of divinity. Myth, by contrast, is the larger picture. To think big is to think mythically. Joseph Campbell on the material of myth. The material of myth is the material of our life, the material of our body, and the material of our environment. And the living vital mythology deals with these in terms that are appropriate to the nature of the knowledge of the time. And our time is very much aligned with all things global. Now, the new moon before our birth is very significant in terms of the lightning path. It's a vital factor in ascertaining the fundamental nature of the stream of vital forces energizing our entire biopsychic organism. This is a really fundamental focal point for any astrological work in terms of the lightning path. And I'll be showing you just why. It has a lot to do with this fellow and this book, which came out in 1984. I got into it in 1985. It's an extraordinary book of 50 maps of consciousness, all synthesizing the Mayan calendar, the chakra system, the I Ching, the Chinese Book of Changes, and much, much more. And it really brings to life in the modern era this recurring myth of the feathered serpent, which embraces a myth of eternal return. So it's cyclicity understood on a broad cultural scale. The feathered serpent is pervasive throughout Mesoamerica and down into Peru with the Inca. Their counterpart to the feathered serpent was called Viracocha. Throughout Mesoamerica, feathered serpent was Kukulkan, Gukamats was another name. So various cultures embraced this overarching myth and gave it form, gave it life, brought it to life. And now in the modern era, especially through Arguelles, the feathered serpent has come alive once again. So one of the maps of consciousness that he presents is this one, which is the holonomic model of knowledge. So this is a very holistic orientation to all manner of scientific endeavor, especially scientific, but also artistic. We have three major sectors: the heavenly sciences, the human or biopsychic sciences, and the earthly sciences. Now, all of these are emanating in time from the geomantic core. So as we see at the core of this diagram, shamanism and geomancy. So both of which refer to man's relationship to heaven and to earth. So it's a way, a geomancy and shamanism are a way of aligning ourselves to the greater life, but having a very centered orientation, a very, we have the kind of orientation that we can look to the east and derive a consistent sort of information from. We look to the west, it has a different meaning. Above, below, all of these things are taken into consideration. And in doing so, we're synthesizing all these different disciplines. We're not limited to one or the other. Now, the new moon before birth really locates us at that center point. So what I'm saying, it's a very primordial astrological indicator, and it's one that is really worthwhile paying attention to. So Arguelles brings forth this notion of the Psi Bank. Now we have here a very abstracted view of the Earth with the Van Allen radiation belt indicated, both belts. And he's proposing that cycling between those two extremities, the outer Van Allen belt and the inner, is a realm of knowledge, a realm of consciousness that is very much in the Psi, of the Psi nature. So it's very much, this is where we find fourth dimensional planetary memory field. This is the realm of holistic thought. These are the realm of the structural principles, the abstracted principles. So his notion is that we have this realm of consciousness that we can gain access to. And his working with the Mayan calendar has brought him to the place of seeing a fundamental pattern that is utilized. It's fractal, so it's used at all different scales, but it's a consistent integration of diverse systems of thought. My sense is that it also then includes other conscious beings, such as the cetaceans, that the cetaceans have just as much, if not more, access to this realm as we do. And the way the cetacean consciousness keeps popping up in my life, it just keeps confirming that, that notion. And just the other day, quite unbidden, this showed up just to confirm what I just said about the access we have to this realm. We have Carl Jung, who for his 75th birthday, at his home called Bollingen, which is shown there, beautiful home, very unique. At his home on his 75th birthday, he established this monument to the right. And one face of it has the image that you see at the upper right-hand corner. Now, if you look more closely, you'll see that this kind of stepped, well, if it was horizontal, it would be a stepped pyramid kind of figure. That is in the Mayan calendar is called Etznab. Well, there, it's inherent in Jung's image at the right. And along with that image are symbols. You have the sun and the moon. You've got Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and so on. So there's Carl Jung attuned to this same planetary Psi Bank. And this I would take as evidence of that, or at least a vector of research worthy of our time. So my discovery of the lightning path, or this realm of consciousness, came in 1986, March 3rd, 1986, when I had a full-bodied initiation into this expanded realm of consciousness. And this was after 14 years of lunation journaling, where I was consciously aware of the phases of the moon. And I think without having had those many moons of attunement, I never would have caught the connection to essentially the orbit of planet Uranus around the sun. Because as it turns out, this orbit of 84 years coincides with 4 seasons of 260 moon cycles each. 260 is the core number of the Mayan sacred calendar, the Tzolk'in, or as Arguelles is also calling it, the harmonic module, when referring to what he derived from the traditional Tzolk'in calendar. What he refers to as the Tzolk'in is updated to be called the harmonic module. So it's applicable in all manner of ways because it's fractal. You can change the scale of the use, but the structure remains the same. It's like the lunation cycle. You can change the scale of the lunation cycle and apply it to the relationship between any 2 planets. But the structure remains the same. The scale is different, but the structure remains the same. Now, when it comes to Uranus, Rudyard has a take on that, and he considers it to be essentially the power enabling man to ascend from one level of consciousness to another. So as I'm understanding it now, this whole work that I'm doing with the lightning path and focusing on Uranus, it's actually kind of breaking trail for others to be able to find their way into this Uranian realm. I'm an Aquarian. This is my ruling planet. I've got 3 planets in Aquarius. So, this is kind of like the Aquarian dispensation. I'm bringing what I understand forward so that others can share in that and take it to the next level. This is an image of that contains the actual math involved. One synodic cycle of the moon, or one lunation cycle, as we call it, is 29 days, 12 hours. So you get 29.53 days. One lunation Tzolk'in round, as I'm calling it, of 260 lunation cycles is 7,677.8 days. 4 of those rounds, 30,711.2 days, is exactly 84.08 years. The orbital period of Uranus, 84.01 years. So I'm calling that close enough to count. So we have this direct lunation cycle orbit of Uranus connection, which I have never encountered in all my astrological work, all of my study of the Mesoamerican calendar. I've never come across anyone else speaking about this particular relationship. So I do feel like I'm on to something brand new. And that's one of the reasons I've been bringing these presentations forward, is to get the word out so maybe other people can join in on the quest to, where does this take us into what next level of consciousness can we be transported by embracing this particular, it's like a key to other worlds. So another way of imaging that, that connection, we have the orbit of Uranus around the sun. Now, as we can see there, in 1986, which is when I had my initial revelation, the rings were face on to the sun. So that means Uranus flips way over on its side, unlike the Earth, which goes partially that way. The Uranus goes right over. So at some point you have the North Polar axis, more north-south axis aligned directly with the sun. And there's your, think of it as a level of consciousness. And that once we get up and into that realm, it's like riding a vector of change. In this particular diagram, if we look to the date 2007, well, there we are. We're between 2007 and 2028. So we're kind of like we're halfway, right where the big arrow is. So this is like a collective journey that we can be aware of or not. The thing is that it's always been there, but I certainly wasn't aware of it. For all those years of journal keeping, I had no sense of it. And then one day it was like, aha, oh, I get it. There's this larger context. And that's been the nature of the journey, is opening up to what was already there. So another way of imaging that, we see, and I must say, this little submarine that goes by here, that came as part of my experience on March 3rd, 1986. I was in a very expanded, ecstatic space, and in fact had the soundtrack was the tune of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Only the words I was getting was, picture yourself in a boat on a time beam with pulsating people whose lives are divine. So you can imagine, I mean, it was one very novel experience, I'll tell you. All of that, you know, and at the same time that I'm feeling my whole body filled with light. And that was that March 3rd, 1986 point when I, as we can see from the diagram, is jumping from that level of strictly lunation cycle awareness into now a Tzolk'in or harmonic module symbolic awareness. So this is the myth of the feathered serpent coming alive in the modern era. So the Tzolk'in or harmonic module. A basic component of the lightning path is the Tzolk'in or harmonic module, a universal spiritual tool combining 20 hieroglyphs and 13 numbers, as shown in the diagram above. Each combination of Tzolk'in number and glyph represents a code of transformation, one stage in a 260-stage process, the purpose of which is the development of cosmic consciousness and unconditional love, ahau, amongst its practitioners. As potent symbolic representations of the many states of awareness encountered on such a quest, these 260 combinations of number and glyph encompass the whole gamut of human experience. So by applying these codes to our own lives, we are enabled to gradually open to greater and larger fields of awareness. Now, the new moon before birth. The whole of this Mayan calendar sequence that the lightning path represents have successive lunations. So every new moon, we enter a new sector of the grid. And because of that, we can map backwards in time to the new moon that occurred before our birth. And there we will find a number and a glyph that is unique to our new moon birth, or new moon before birth. So for example, this, well, let's see, I'll go to the next. The mapping of that of that placement within the context of the harmonic module comes through the Book of Electrum, as I'm calling it. Electrum is a metal that results from the unification of gold and silver. The lightning path is formulated on the assumption that energy and information coming to humanity from galactic center constitutes a vast spiritual birthright accessible to individual humans through a variety of intuitive means. In the following pages, astrology and mythology unite as the Book of Electrum, a multi-decade chart of individual moon cycles integrated within the overarching structure of the harmonic module. So we have now emerging what is called the Temple of Birth. So the Book of Electrum astrologically assigns to each and every mythic participant an overarching sequence of numbers and glyphs known as a temple of birth. In its broadest reach, a person's temple of birth gathers together the wealth of astro-mythological symbolism that constitutes that person's unique spiritual birthright on the lightning path. So the image on the right shows a complete lunar year of 13 moons as a stepped pyramid. Now it's number 7 that's organizing those other 12 numbers into this pyramid. The 7 stands alone. All of the other numbers are paired up. So 1 and 13, 2 and 12, and so on. But it's the hieroglyph at the 7th moon of the year we were born, the lunar year we were born, that determines our lunation birthday. And so, or our temple of birth, I'm sorry. So it looks like this. For someone born in a moon cycle that's contained in the 13 years of that lunar year, they are born within the temple of star harmony. Should you choose to begin the process of activating your temple of birth, there is guidance and support for you contained in the Tzolk'in glyphs and numbers associated with your temple. For example, one way you can initiate the process of activation and embodiment of the sacred knowledge embedded in your temple of birth is by simply imaging forth in your mind's eye the 7th moon glyph denoting that temple. To the extent that you are open to it, this simple act will spark your imagination and sensitize your awareness to archetypal forces latent in your personal unconscious. So this is really the starting point of opening to the gift that is there for you. There has to be that initial openness. There has to be some desire to embrace this realm. But as soon as you do, it starts in the image. It's the imaging process. We go from the 6th chakra down, basically, as it's coming down and into the body. It's kind of like owning, in the Chinese zodiac, I'm born in the year of the ox. On the lightning path, I'm born in the temple of thunder. Now, the difference between the two is that the Chinese zodiac, although it has a lunar component to it. It's fixed to the yearly cycle of the sun. And in that sense, according to the Mayan numerology, it embraces number 12, which is complex stability. Now, the lightning path, on the other hand, is based on 13, which is the number of universal movement. So, whereas the Chinese zodiac keeps you cycling back and around to the sun, the lightning path is a vector that goes beyond that dualistic foundation into a more spiralic orientation. And that's where you get the universal movement. It's not just coming back and around like the annual cycle of the sun. It's spiraling out into deep space, in a sense. So the Book of Electrum. The Book of Electrum facilitates determination of the astrological alignment of a person's birth to the structure of the Tzolk'in as it is used on the lightning path. Pegged to the moment the lightning path was revealed to me on March 3rd, 1986, the Book of Electrum lists the sequence of lunar years extending backward and forward in time from that point. Each lunar year consists of 13 moon cycles, and this series corresponds to a mythic temple of the imagination, named according to the glyph associated with the 7th moon in the series. For each temple listed below, 2 dates are shown. A birthday falling within these 2 dates corresponds to the temple indicated and answers the question, what's my temple of birth? So, the temple of birth is available on the Lightning Path website. It's also available in my little book, The Lightning Path. I self-published in 2012. And what we have it here as well. These are the dates. So for example, my own date, February 3rd, 49, I would look through the numbers, the dates here, and over on the right-hand side, we see that between April 9th, 1948 to April 28th, 1949, we have the Temple of Thunder. So that's how easy it is to determine a person's temple of birth. Once you have the Book of Electrum in hand. And you can go ahead and ahead. I've progressed it up to what, 2028. So there is that anticipatory aspect to this work as well. But most concerned at the moment with activating your temple of birth. As simple as it may appear on the surface, the Book of Electrum is, in fact, a complex, multi-level blueprint for peaceful, mythically inspired, and cosmically coordinated group action, grounded in some of the most ancient and universal knowledge systems known to man. If you feel drawn to incorporating this ancient knowledge into your own life, determination of your temple of birth using the Book of Electrum is an important first step. You will gain further incorporation of knowledge by cultivating mindfulness of synchronicities within your day-to-day life, especially if tracked through a personal lunation journaling practice like I have introduced previously. Additionally, you may wish to create personalized rituals of attunement, such as Steve has done. Attunement to your temple's vital spiritual essence, based on the numbers and glyphs associated with that temple. A mindful, ritualistic approach to life is a practical way of empowering one's intention to make contact with the non-ordinary realms of consciousness latent in the symbolism of the Tzolk'in. Through such an approach, one bridges the physical world of the senses to the metaphysical world of the cosmic imagination. A quote from Mircea Eliade: "The man who understands a symbol not only opens himself to the objective world, but at the same time succeeds in emerging from his personal situation and reaching a comprehension of the universal. Thanks to the symbol, the individual experience is awoken and transmuted into a spiritual act. The illustration shown at left evokes the complete process of temple activation. Shown aligned with the seventh or crown chakra of an individual person is hieroglyph Manik, representative of the temple of fingers and toes, first temple in the series of 20 that make up the lightning path. In this image, hieroglyph Manik sits at the peak of a, quotes, pyramid of 13 moon cycles. Descending the steps of that pyramid are 12 vacant boxes awaiting insertion of the dozen other hieroglyphs associated with this temple. All 20 temples of the lightning path have the same structure, yet each has its own unique combination of 13 hieroglyphs. Now, just for fun, and this is all, I'm dealing myself with all of this knowledge as if true. So I'm always open to changing my understanding. I'm not seeking the final answer ever, but along the way, I'm open to entertaining new and novel thoughts, and in that way, bearing down on what's the core truth here. But in order to do so, I'm going to have to establish beliefs and then transcend those beliefs. And this is an ongoing process. So as part of the way of exploring the lightning path, I've gone into my astrological records to see who's a good exemplar for this temple, perhaps. Is there some kind of resonance between my understanding of what that person's life was about and the symbology, the temple symbology that is associated astrologically with that person? So Arguelles himself, it just seems so appropriate that he be born in the temple of the breath of spirit. Jose was famous for his shakuhachi flute playing at the start and at the finish of his lectures and so on. He really was embodying, in a sense, the Kokopelli kind of archetype of, spreading his knowledge far and wide on the breath of spirit flowing through him. So this is a sense of what you'll get from the Book of Electrum. Once you determine your temple of birth, there are, and this is my attempt at a poetic reading of the sequence of 13 symbols associated with each temple. And, I had never done anything like this before, and this is what I came to. So, for example, the 13 glyphs associated with his temple, I'll just share the invocation. I'm a galactic conduit in communication with the divine. I am in resonance with the earth. I'm a spiritual warrior in the hall of mirrors. I define the lightning path of ascension and release. Centered in cosmic consciousness, I see the source of life as myself. Inspiration from unseen forces empowers my spirit. Dreams carry me deep into the mystery of my soul. That soul is alive with the pulse of cosmic potential. Passionately, I seek to manifest that potential. I surrender my will to the will of the Creator. To the great work, I dedicate myself. to the great work I show the way. So Mr. Jung once again makes an appearance. I was born July 26, 1875. I've pushed the Book of Electrum back that far and farther, actually, so that we're able to determine that his temple of birth was the cosmic gateway. Hieroglyph Muluk is at the 7th or crown chakra position for this temple. Now, specifically, within that temple, he was born in the 12th moon. And the 12th moon was associated with hieroglyph Ish. Now, this is the sorcerer, the shaman, the one-hearted being, the shaman, the shapeshifter. And Jung, in his plunge into the depths of the collective and the personal unconscious, was certainly an avid. He was a shaman in the sense that, you know, who leapt into the depths and came back with so much for the rest of us. Now, as we've been doing with these presentations, at this point, it's to look to where are we now in this flow of lunations, and to imbibe some of the keywords for the upcoming lunation, because we have the opportunity of working consciously with the hieroglyph of the month, we'll call it, and to derive from it, you know, inspiration. Essentially, that's what I'm going for anyway. What can we learn during this sector of the complete matrix? What is it that's being called forth? And right now we ourselves are in 12 Ish. So there's a synchronicity for you that Jung shows up. I didn't know this ahead of time. Jung shows up, born in 12 Ish, and here we are in 12 Ish at the moment. So 12, complex stability, which I talked about earlier, stability in expansion, greater constellation, union of polarity, framework of connectedness. Those qualities associated with Ish: integrity, heart knowing, alignment with divine will, magician, shaman, jaguar, night seer, priest, torchbearer, magic. And these are all keywords that come from the Mayan Oracle by Spilsbury and Brenner, which has been my kind of basic source for the this kind of knowledge associated with each glyph. So this summarizes where we are now. We're in the temple of the cosmic gateway, which covers the 13 moons. And more specifically, we're in the 12th moon of this temple. I just yesterday put a link on the right here. We have my Lightning Path website. So just on the left side, just above the Lightning Path book image, is a link directly to the Book of Electrum. So if you're wanting to get a quick read of a person's lunation birthday, or I mean, sorry, temple of birth, you can go to that link and it take you directly there. And also just a little plug for my book, my 2012 book, which is also available from the website. It's a great resource. It's got the Book of Electrum. It's got all the invocations of sovereignty. It's got imagery. It's got the story of the development of the lightning path. It's all in that little book. There's a larger version available as well, which includes reproductions of paintings that Teresa and I did for a 13 paintings during passage through the Temple of Birth. The last word goes to Albert Einstein. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. So here's to the proliferation of imagination and inspiration derived from a look at the lightning path. And there we go. You're all muted.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. Very well done. Very clear.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I say 30 years ago, I was thinking, yeah, I found out I was in the monkey artists and tricksters. And that's about as far as it went, only in the sense that I felt it.
Yeah.
As I moved through the 30 years. But I think it took those 30 years to finally, when I hear you speak now, I understand the words, where back then it just seemed like a whole mixture of things I didn't understand. But
yeah,
there's
totally.
an understanding now that's a lot clearer. It's coming a lot clearer. Maybe that's the Aquarian age coming. Yeah, it's fascinating. Last night, we listened to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now he's an astronomer and physicist, but he's not big on astrology. But he's written a book looking at us and at the Earth from the cosmos, looking back. And to me, that's a big breakthrough, because he was asked about the James Webb telescope and what does that mean? And he's saying, well, that expansion of what we can see is going to help us here on Earth as humans to see more.
Right.
And he's presenting this on mainstream television now. So
great.
I found that quite exciting to hear him speak with that. And then I see what you're presenting is just right in line to be accepted in these times. So it was quite to hear him speak, and then of course to hear you speak now. It's like, yeah, it's very congruent.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Can I share something?
Absolutely.
On Wednesday, I saw a slide in a slideshow presented by Sophia. And I just thought, I really want to draw that. So 2 days ago, with encouragement from Sophia, I drew this.
Oh my.
This made my day.
It's the pod mind at work.
It was so much fun to do.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
on.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I must get your book.
It's
I
really
some-
it's one that I enjoy. It's a good size. And it's just, it's got it, most of it there, certainly the introductory to the lightning path.
Yeah.
I just have to say, there are many other levels that have revealed themselves. Like there's a whole light body integration with the birth chart that's very complex. But if you spend the time, I mean, you're just constantly being opened up. And it's really been fascinating, the journey. Just, constantly seeing these new systems. And then as the explorer, I feel like some responsibility, to bring that knowledge back so others can benefit as well. And at times it gets overwhelming because there's so much comes through,
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for doing this. Gosh.
Just who I am.
Yeah, there you go, eh?
You're welcome. I'm glad you're appreciating. Yeah.
I'm in with monkeys, artists, and tricksters.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't surprise me one little bit, eh?
Great stuff.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
this is awesome.
mudras for each one are so great. That's the monkeys, artists, tricksters. I love it.
I can do
And
that.
Steve, you over the years, over the decades now, you've been consistent in just being that. Whenever I think of you, I always think of, there's this joy and this exuberance, this spontaneity, and it's just great. Oh, we got our kitty back.
Yeah, well, he didn't go anywhere. He came and sat. He sits behind me in my chair and listens, and he does that with Sophia's art classes too. He comes along and then he sits down and hunkers up around my back and just pushes me off the chair.
Yeah.
He's drawn to anything that has positive energy vibes, and he likes to soak things in. It's like, yeah, if he gets restless, then I know he's not really, it's okay, I'm not really into this. But he has stayed the whole time. He's come and stayed the whole time with us. So I use him as my energy meter reader. I had a question for you.
Yeah.
The temple exemplars. You chose people, correct, as examples?
Yeah.
I'm wondering what in my mind I was like, people. Would you have ever thought of using myth as an example? Different myths that would be examples? It just came into my mind that, I wonder if there'd be a myth that would go.
Yeah, that's never occurred to me, but I can see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting quest.
Yeah. It's got me thinking of I do a lot with tarot. I used to do a lot with tarot, and I'm kind of going back into it. There was one practice in tarot that's very similar to the temple of Rascal Move. Come on now. Very similar to the finding your temple of birth, and it focuses on the major arcana and the influences on a year basis, right? So whatever year you're born in, there's a particular major arcana that goes with it, and then there's a way of charting your whole life out. So each year you will know the major influence. And now it's got me thinking, okay, I want to do my temple of birth, and then I want to take and see how these together. I don't know, it just blew my mind. And because there's so many different systems, right?
Yes.
There's so many different paths. Not systems, the wrong word. There's so many different paths, and yet they come together in very peculiar and overlapping ways. And so I'm just, okay, what happens? So that the new moon of birth, is that the new moon before the time one is born?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Somewhere I have a star chart, a chart done for from my date of birth and the time and that, but I don't know if it has the new moon or if it ever even took in the new moon. Okay. Probably not. It was done.
It probably doesn't have the new moon prior to your birth. It'll have the moon at your birth.
Okay, but not
We're
before.
going back to the new moon.
Okay.
So your book of Electrum has the temples.
It has the
And
temple.
those are derived from the new moon before birth, correct? So say, for example, my monkey, that would have been related to a new moon that was happening before that, those birth dates that you showed listed, like March 1953 to, and then it showed that was the year of the monkey.
Right.
So that's based on that new moon before birth.
Your birth within that context is the new moon before birth.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
so it's already listed. Now, to find my other 12, I can find that on your website. The lightning path will show monkey, artists and tricksters, and then it would show the other.
Actually, it's graphically shown in the invocation for your temple.
Okay,
So the invocations of sovereignty, that's part of the presentation, is all the 13 hieroglyphs, and then the wording that I came up with.
right, just like you showed for
Arguelles. Yeah.
Okay.
But now the new moon before birth, I wish there was a place on the internet, and maybe there is, where we could go. What I've used as a resource, because I've had to go back through every moon cycle, and transcribe onto my my big printout, and I'm using an ephemeris of the moon, so it shows those new moons exactly, and it's very convenient. But I don't know of any convenient spot for finding that online. But maybe a future
You have to
development.
you have to find that ephemeris of where that new moon happened around your birth date, like before.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, as you say that, I'm thinking there are astrology websites that show you the different quarters, basically. So new moon, first quarter. I'm going to have to track that down. That's a project for me in this lunation.
Yeah, I know Astrodienst.
Yeah.
They offer the ephemeris.
Yeah, they're really comprehensive. So it's probably there. It's probably there.
So if I find that new moon, that's still going to tell me that I'm in the temple of monkeys,
Yeah.
artists and tricksters. So
Yeah.
in essence, it's already done for me.
Yeah, in a sense.
But if I wanted to find out about others' temples, then I could refer back to that ephemeris and then bring it forward to find their temples.
Yeah. Or you just go straight to the Book of Electrum, and
which you've already done.
you've got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's getting clearer.
There's a lot of balls in the air. I realize.
Yeah.
That's why I've been doing my best to, kind of bring it down to where I can at least get a dialogue happening, because there are, many components. But and there's something about this new moon before birth. It's a grounding, like it's a symbol of a really primordial grounding. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's yet to reveal all of its mystery.
Yeah. I can see if that's the new moon that I'm born into. I'm coming into the phase of that cycle from that new moon, from those seeds that were planted. Yeah. Hmm. So I wanted to share that I had a meeting with an owl this past week. I could hear the hooting. I go, that's an owl. I remember we had them right outside our window when we lived in Texas for a while.
Hmm.
I said, oh, I'm hearing that. So I went out onto the balcony and I look up and here there's a gable, kind of a false gable on top of the apartment to the east. And I look and I know there's woods behind and I can hear that owl calling it in the woods behind. And I, oh, that's it. But then I said, oh, look at that. Isn't that interesting? The apartment owners have put one of those fake owls on this gable end. And so here's the trickster at work. So I'm listening to that. I'm listening to that owl in the forest and I'm going, wow, that is so cool. Just enjoying the sound and looking at this new installation. And suddenly that owl's head just turns to the side. And I go, oh, and then it starts returning the call back to the one that's calling in the forest.
Oh, wow.
And they
Nice.
started calling to one another.
Oh,
But my trickster had me believing that that was installed by the apartment complex.
wow.
It was the perfect size, the exact thing.
My neighbor has one. I see it all the time.
Yeah, until it moved its head. And I went, whoa. And then we were together for 15 minutes. It stayed there on that gable.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I just was able to stay in that. So it was really, really fun.
Nice.
But the trickster showed up.
He'll probably work his way into your artistry.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, I realized that I read the Power Animal book and came to realize we compared that we've actually seen in the wild all the animals in that Power Animal book except one, and that's the lynx.
Oh, wow.
But all the others we've communicated with.
They must have, do they have for the snake, what do they have? They have
Yeah, they have snake and
rattlesnake.
armadillo and what's the other guy? The opossum. The opossum.
Mm.
We were able to see those while living in Texas, so that helped to get those two, and the grouse.
Lots of snakes in the
Yeah, lots of snakes.
desert. I'm a serpent.
Would
Where-
you see a lynx if you went back up island?
Where?
If you went, would you see a lynx maybe if you went back up island traveling? Remember when you went to the north end of the island?
Yeah,
I'm not sure that there is lynx on the island.
yeah, I'm not sure either.
You know,
We have
there's
seen
around
wolves.
here. Yeah.
Well, we have rattlesnakes, and we had an encounter with one the other day.
Mhm.
Teresa almost walked right into it.
Yeah, they're so camouflaged.
It was so camouflaged as a sage bush.
Mhm.
It was all wrapped in and around. It was,
Yeah,
even when I knew exactly where it was hard to differentiate its different
Yeah.
parts. But
it looks
it was
like
just
a branch.
like a branch, exactly.
Mhm.
And it had obviously been enjoying a sunny moment. You know, there was just the way the sun was coming into where it was.
Mhm.
It was just really a sweet spot, I could tell. And he didn't want us bothering him. And so he, you know, made lots of noise. And fortunately, the dog was with us too. So we all, you know, just gave it space, you know, and just blessed. Thanks for the warning, you know.
Yes. Yeah, we came across one in the Mojave Desert, and I was always looking on the trail, walking ahead, but there was one in like a bush,
Bush,
a creosote bush
yeah.
at shoulder level,
Oh boy.
and that made me realize, oh, it's
Snakes
you got to
everywhere.
look at all levels, not just they're not just on the ground.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah, same
Wow.
same similar experience.
Yeah, I always think mindfulness. That's the teaching from Serpent for me.
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in the sagebush, and I'm very, very consciously tracking every step, you know,
Mhm.
because like you say, they can be here, they can be down below. And
It can
it's
be
real.
mixed. I've seen that picture where it's mixed in with leaves and it says, find the snake.
Yeah.
You
Good
can't
luck.
even see it amongst the dry leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, links we may have. Are there links in the Kananaskis or the maybe up in Jasper area,
Yeah, I think there probably is.
further north?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely in the and you might even find them even in the interior of BC as well, wherever there's a bit of hill and forest and that, they're pretty. Yeah.
So we have cougars in this area, and I think it
Yeah.
seems to me I've heard of lynx as well, down toward Lytton.
Okay.
It's a little, you know, it's, the mountains are higher there. And,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah,
You'd have them south of Kamloops too. I'm sure up towards like I'm thinking it's probably out on that ridge from Logan Lake down around towards Merritt and Princeton and that. I'm sure you'll find them in there as well. Yeah. Yeah. The trick is not to confuse the between lynx and bobcat.
Bobcats, right?
They're so close, you know.
Mm.
The other property I lived on, we used to have in the winter, well, all year round. I'm sure the bobcat was there all year round, but we only saw evidence of it in the winter, and that was because it's left its huge footprints as
Mhm.
it was tracking down rabbits and whatever too. So yeah, and they're so beautiful to see. Yeah.
Mhm.
before you know, we part, is there any, do you want to know your temple of birth, Shirley, or do you know it? No, you're muted.
Love to know. Yeah. It's the one after the monkeys, artists, and tricksters.
Oh, so you do know it, or you?
No, I don't. I was just from reading on your slide. I was
Okay.
quickly checking the birthdays, and I think that one ends just. My birthday is July 17th, 53, which was right after. It was at the bottom of the page.
So July 11th, 53. You're still in monkeys, artists, and tricksters. That's
No,
not
I'm on
changed.
the 17th.
So then it's the 17th is Temple of Seeds.
Temple of Seeds.
Yes.
Seeds.
Okay. Interesting. I have a really green thumb. I have 60 plants in my house.
You do? That's a lot.
Yeah. Temple of Seeds. Okay.
I like that. It sounds like it's full of potential,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's
promise. Yeah.
Well, I keep getting ideas. They just pop out of my head, and yeah, I need to expand time so I have time to spend with them all.
Or plant a few.
Yeah, keep planting a few. That's interesting you say that because anywhere I have ever lived where I've had ground that hasn't been an apartment, but any home I've lived in, I've always left a garden behind.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not many people could make that claim. I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you say that you have a journaling practice, so that means that you journal, meaning you write every day. And my question is, when you sit down with your paper and pen, you have some questions in your mind, or what? How the actual process is just what you sense or think, or so? What is the content of how you process that journaling?
Right on. It's very open-ended. So it's kind of, because I'm always researching, like I'm bringing all of my research into that place as well. So every day, if I've come across a extended passage in a book, I may photocopy that, and boom, that comes into my journal. You know, and then I make my notes, whatever. You know, here's, for example, here's my 3-ring binder for the
Okay.
last couple of journals.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And you know, and they end up gathering a lot of images as well as text. If I do an I Ching reading, that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm recalling a memory that of something that in a relationship that I'm still working on, that I want to flesh out, you know, that'll go in there. It's virtually anything that's going on in my life that I want to kind of keep appraised of. You know, I was really early on, a friend of mine saw what I was up to, and she said, "Oh, you've got to read this book by Arthur Jung." And Arthur Jung was the inventor who got the first commercial helicopter off the ground. And he was a physicist. And he said that journaling for him became his spiritual practice. Initially, it was his journal as an inventor. So he would keep track of all the different steps that he was working with the invention. And he said it was very helpful to be able to go back a week or 2 weeks or 2 years to something that he'd been working on, you know, bringing that forward because it was the piece he needed for now. And so he just raved about the value of journaling in his own practice. And it turned out that whole segment of his life where he got the first the commercial copter off the ground, he said the helicopter became a metaphor for his own spiritual being, his own uplifting. Well, he called it the psychopter. And he went from physics to metaphysics. That was his journey. And he became a very avid astrologer in his latter life. I have his published journal, which goes for a number of years. And it's just fascinating to see his process. And he really encouraged, it was encouragement for me, certainly, to the point I actually called him one day. He had a thing called the Institute for the Study of Consciousness. And I came across this, and there was a phone number, and I thought, wow, I got questions about this. So I dial the phone, and I can just get the picture. he hasn't received a phone call, and because this guy was way out of the box. He hasn't received a phone call on this line for a heck of a long time. It was kind of like, I imagine him clambering over stuff to get to the phone. But we had this fantastic conversation, and we ended by sharing birth data with each other. You know, that was the next step, was to go off and process it from there. Never talked to him again, but it was such a great moment.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, Arthur Jung, definitely. I really like, you know, if you get into astrology, you'll know that there's a series of symbols called the Sabian Symbols. Mark Edmund Jones, and early in the 20th century, and you get a different symbol for each degree of the zodiac. So your sun has a symbol, your moon has a symbol, the new moon has a symbol, and that body of symbolism came forth with the funding that provided by Arthur Jung. He and his wife had a foundation, and they funded Mark Edmund Jones to bring the Sabian symbols forward. And I was so knocked out by that. That's just was like, wow. Just how kind of tight knit the connections can be.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I see the value as a practice in journaling,
Right.
and actually Carl Jung started his journey with the mandalas. You know,
Yep.
like he really experimented, and it was a mandala practice. Like he made a mandala, I think, for a whole year, every day.
Every day.
That transformed his whole life.
Yep.
And then he brought the mandala practice into his private practice for his patients. So mandalas, as we see from Arguelles and from our art class, I want to speak, that is just changing life, and it just opens to a total new realm. And I just want to acknowledge Kelly or courage about the Hunapku, because you know, I was teaching the first class I was teaching on 3 different shape of the Tai Chi diagram, and I need to be conscious of the class has advanced student and not that advanced student. You know, like we have kind of a classroom of one room classroom, you know, or one room school, you know, so everybody comes together. So I always want to be conscious that I offer some little advanced material, but keep it as simple as possible. So I was kind of debating that shall I add the Hunapku to my slideshow? But I said, oh, I'm going to add it to my slideshow, and whoever wants to notice it. And then, of course, Carrie said, oh, I love to draw these, you know, and I said, okay. I kind of offered it to her. I said, can you figure it out on your own, or you need some help from me? And she said, oh, I think I'm going to try it. And she was courageously diving into a new territory. And
Right on.
you did an awesome job.
Yeah, that's so great.
I really enjoyed doing that. Yeah. Synchronicity. Wow.
So
Thanks, Sophia.
that particular symbol for the Hunab-ku, the galactic center, apparently the story I got was that Arguelles first encountered that on a blanket, a Mexican blanket. And then he, you know, obviously abstracted it to black and white. And it was through his dispensation that it became like the symbol for a galactic center. Whereas before that, it was really kind of submerged. It wasn't popular. So just a little.
Yeah, he brought it forth.
So yeah, we're bringing it to life. I mean, it's so great that in the Americas we've got this, like you say, the Tai Chi symbol. It's like the yin yang, the balance of the dark and the light, and there's a heritage there. So Sophia, would you share your temple with us?
I'm the serpent.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, I'm the serpent.
Yes.
Yeah.
The wise one, of course.
Yes.
Sophia.
You're the wise one.
Simple is like that.
The feathered serpent.
And sexy too.
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
relate to the snake as my animal power, my power animal, and I relate to the serpent as my temple. And then recently I was some shamanic classes, and they talk about, you know, like the condor and the hummingbird, and then the puma and the serpent in their medicine wheel. So it's as Shirley said, that there is different system, but looking at different system, there is, I find that there is a similar component comes to all of the different
Yeah,
systems,
I
and
know.
seeing the similar component at the same time seeing what is the difference and embracing that different component of that system. So it is, I'm really seeing that is the way of enriching and constantly opening, like
Yeah.
as you say, it's constantly opening. And I agree with you that sometimes you use the word sometimes feels overwhelming, and I sometimes say to myself, am I going crazy here? You know, like I'm just really feeling this opening, and sometimes I say, okay, I'm just gonna hold this a little bit before I go to another level of information or understanding or embracing some new piece, because it just suddenly feels, poof, it just maybe too much. I'm just flying too fast. So I really had to work on this grounding, you know, like the
Yeah.
grounding,
Yeah.
and be that channel of that cosmic being, and not taking off, you know, like it just really feels sometimes this mandala work, what I'm doing for myself and what I'm doing for my classes, sometimes just, ooh, it's just too lightning fast. So I am very often really need to grounding exercise. Yeah,
Right.
Have
Right
a
on.
coffee.
have a coffee. Yeah, have a good grounding coffee. And maybe some sugar as well.
Yeah.
A little apple strudel with my coffee, it really helps me to bring me down
Oh,
or bring me connected. Maybe not down, but connected, so I can be a totally open channel and just keep channeling, but staying grounded. Yeah.
Right on. Right on.
And I was thinking about similar to what you were saying, Sophia, just the other morning. I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's about. I remember one time. I know. I was thinking more in terms of the mandala of my name and how each letter of our name gives us different characteristics and strengths and things, and putting them together, and your first name is social, and your last name is your foundation, your middle name is your potential. And I'm going, oh yeah, but you know, and then I'm like you, I do things from tarot, I do things from numerology, and you know, there's this moon thing, and and how do I keep it together? And I remember one time and going, oh, being advised to think of myself as not to be pulled in and, you know, overwhelmed in all these places, but to think of myself as, you know, a round prism, a prism that's in a ball shape, but it's faceted, and each one of those facets is a different aspect, but the middle of that prism is solid, and that's who I am as my soul. And then the rest of it is just all the parts that amplify what is in my soul. And if I remember to do that, I can keep myself more grounded. I don't know if that makes sense, because there's a part of me, like hard that's creative, the part that, you know, in numerology I'm 6 and my soul is a 5, and that's a hierophant, but my name is a 6, and that's the lovers, and then you can go on from all over the place. Now I have a temple of seeds, yeah, and yeah, but to bring it back to that center of that prism, which in art is the center of the mandala, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, now as long as I'm here, I can be all those other things, but yeah, depending sometimes where we are and what's around us and who's around us, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's quite the journey.
Yes, when you talk about the Chinese, you know, there's both all that going on, the East, the Western thought. So then I'm a serpent in the Chinese. So I can bring that one in. And then I know Sophia is, in the Chinese calendar, is a tiger. I see that too.
I'm a serpent. You're the snake.
Serpent?
Yeah, you're the snake, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm the snake too.
We are in the same tribe.
No wonder we're here.
Yeah, we got thunder,
That makes 3 snakes.
thunder, serpent, monkey seeds.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And Wayne, do you know, or you are an ox? Did you say you are an ox in the Chinese?
Earth ox.
Earth ox,
Earth
yeah.
ox. Okay, that's good.
That's his
That's
grounding.
grounded. Earth ox, yeah.
Just keep trudging on, you know, trudging on.
Through the sagebrush.
Yeah.
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 Determination.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can be it all, eh?
Mhm. Yeah, I like that, all the different facets.
Mhm. Like a diamond.
Mhm. Prism. Mhm.
Mhm.
Very cool.
What was the creature along with the puma, condor, and serpent? What was number 4? We're talking about the Mayan.
Is that a hummingbird? Hummingbird?
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. That might be a nice thing to
Mhm. Yes.
do those for.
Yes. Ooh, new ideas.
Oh,
More seeds.
More seeds.
oh yeah. Love the seeds. Yeah. Oh yeah. This has been amazing. Best Sunday morning I've had since we were here last time.
Likewise, it's been great, really. And I'm always interested in the what shows up in our chat room over the month.
Yeah.
It's been some real treasures, and yeah, the artistry and the connections. It's been good.
Yeah, really fun.
I've I've of course been kind of disseminating my music, and I'm working on more songs. It's been really fun.
Mhm.
I'm just kind of amazed at what ends up happening. And I listened to it a month later, and I can't tell how the heck I put all that together. You know? It's like, who did that? You know, just like some of the graphics that I come across from my past. It's like, I have no idea how I would have done that. You know?
Mhm.
But just whoosh. So yeah, it's really been fun. This the musical part. I really feel like I've made a long-term commitment to keeping with the production of new songs. There's something with that, building on that cetacean connection. I'm getting more skillful with the little ebo thing that I was telling you guys about that vibrates the string. It's like there's a whole world of exploration there.
Mhm.
And, because then I could start bringing effects to modulate the sound, like draw it out into, having echoes and, and when I'm doing that, I've really got my antennas up for that telepathic connection. I really believe it's real,
Mhm.
and but it's going to take some concentration and focus, and and I think the music is the bridge. That
Yeah.
to me is that's the message I'm getting.
And
I mean, it
how
goes
can-
to like Tesla saying, it's all about frequencies, and that's what music
Yeah.
is, So
and how it can help get your message out, I feel, in these times.
mm,
Uh, last night we watched Elton John perform in front of the White House. And it's on PBS, it's on YouTube, and he was given the Humanitarian Medal of Honor
mm,
from the US for his work with his music and how it's connected people and his efforts with
Whole life
HIV,
work.
AIDS, and his
Mm.
whole life work.
oh yeah,
And he was surprised, it was a surprise to him. He played in, because he's on his concert tour,
yeah,
farewell tour, and he played there and they surprised him and he was just so
Wow.
emotional.
wow,
The work that he's done, and he was honored for his effort worldwide that he's making to get rid of that dis-ease and the stigma around it. So
yeah,
it was a very powerful showing. It showed how the music connects so many people.
yeah, yeah. That's wonderful.
It's beautiful.
Right on.
Well,
Feels like.
we say goodbye.
Anybody have anything final they want to share? All
I just want
right.
to say that I am in total awe of your presentation. I just love how I don't know what is the app you use or how is it happens, but every time we have this new moon, I am just always curious and excited. So how that presentation moving and what you put together. So
Mhm.
I just want to acknowledge your work, not just for the content, but for the visual effect. I enjoy both. I enjoy the content, I enjoy the visual, I enjoy your experimenting to music because I am really feeling that yes, frequency is the key. As a matter of fact, one of my friends just recently get into a standing gong event, like she bought a standing gong, like a Tibetan gong, so she's working. And she sent me kind of a blog and saying that actually mandalas and geometric forms changing the frequency of the gong. And I said to her, maybe it was on the other way around, like I was thinking of the Matamoto, how the frequency changing the water molecules. And I kind of wrote to her and I said, did you mean to say that the frequency of the gong as you tune it will change the geometry of the mandalas, what she working? And she said, no. She said, that's correct. The way I draw the mandalas, that's changing the sound of the gong. So I thought, wow, that's a totally new realm. Because my expectation was it was on the other way around. But now I'm learning is this way is working as well. So just magic happens with all of the art, and I just want to say that how much I appreciate what you put together and that you have. I think that takes courage to step out to Facebook and say this is what I'm doing, and inviting people to come and experience. And I feel blessed that I know you for many moons, and now we are here together and going to another more expensive journey. So thank you for being who you are and doing what you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That means a lot. Appreciate. I just treasure our connection. Like it goes back decades now. So yeah. Wonderful.
On your website, can we find our mudras?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what seeds and thunder and serpent.
We know that's the monkey.
Well, we know that.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah. I testify that he's the monkey.
Well, here's the thunder.
Oh, wow. Wow.
They really are great to work with. It's really, try going through all 20. That's a blast. It's really well done. And that's all in what's on the website, but also the Mayan Oracle. Definitely a must-have book, that one.
Mayan Oracle.
Yeah.
Very good.
Mayan Oracle. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the cards.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay, guys.
Beautiful.
Bye for now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much to think about every time, because there's broadening of point of view and perspectives, and this is all good because it's
So good.
yeah,
Absolutely.
it's all enlightening. Yeah.
Okay.
Joyful. Yeah. Planting new seeds. Thank you.
Right on.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a great month.
See you next time.
Yeah.